Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back to the Astro Read. This is Nayeli. Stella is not joining us for this episode because she is recovering from a recent trip, but we look forward to having her back. So I am going to take the wheel over for this episode, which is going to be all about what we can expect this spring season of 2024. And just to recap the Astro Read for those that are joining us for the first time, this podcast is all about astrology, celebrity news, and how to use astrology in your everyday life. Welcome back to our current subscribers, and hello to all our new viewers tuning in today. If you're new and like our content, please feel free to subscribe. By continuing to gain subscribers, that allows us to continue making this content. And your comments also help us get ideas on new episodes and what topics you like best. And since our last episode, we have had some new subscribers, so welcome. So like I said, this episode is going to be all about what we can expect in spring 2024. And if you're curious to know what happens in the winter, please check out our Energy of the Winter 2023-2024 episode, which you can find in our video collection. So there's a lot to get into, so I'm going to get into it. There is a lot happening this spring. So we have the eclipses continuing, the Libra Aries eclipses. We'll have another Mercury retrograde, which will pretty much last the whole month of April. Then we'll have another installment of Pluto Aquarius, of the age of Aquarius, in my opinion, Pluto in Aquarius. So we'll have another installment, another chapter, if you will, of this Pluto and Aquarius era that we're kind of inching towards. And that will officially start in November of 2024. Jupiter will be a big player this season, and I'll explain why. May 23rd, mark your calendar. In my opinion, May 23rd will be the biggest and the most impactful day in the spring season. Some astrologers and people out there may disagree, but in our opinion, May 23rd, 2024 will be a big day, and I'll get into why. And then, of course, we'll cover the usual planetary movements and full and new moons that you can expect this season. And in my opinion, some of the full and new moons happening in the spring might be just as impactful or maybe even more impactful than these two eclipses that will be happening in the spring. So let's get started. So March 19th is the start of the spring season. That is when Aries season starts. So, you might be feeling it already, but you'll probably feel like you're getting out of that winter slump. You might be enjoying some warmer weather if you're in the Northern Hemisphere. And you might be looking to actually get something started after maybe taking a backseat in the winter. But there might be some things that might get in the way of that. So it's good that you're feeling that energy. But as I get through what's going on in March and especially in April, you might realize that you may have to pump the brakes a little bit, but it's good to have this energy. At the same time, or almost at the same time, 3 days later on March 22nd, Mars, the planet of action, enters Pisces, which Mars usually doesn't feel very comfortable in Pisces, in my opinion. Pisces is more of a laid back sign. It's a water sign. It's a mutable sign. So it's kind of like a go with the flow, being one with the universe type of sign. And Mars can be a very impulsive planet and all about getting things done, getting things started. So as the spring starts, you might be feeling this kind of maybe tug and pull of you want to get things started, but maybe there's some things that are out of your control that you're kind of waiting to see pan out, or waiting to see how that transpires before you take some action. And if you're feeling that way, that's fine. I would say that that's to be expected as Mars enters Pisces on March 22nd. Mars will be in this sign until April 30th. And I find that very interesting because pretty much the whole month of April is going to be a Mercury retrograde, just one big Mercury retrograde. So you're already starting to get this feel of, okay, I want to get things going, but do I have all the information that I need? Do I make a decision, with a little bit of uncertainty? And, it's up to you as to whether you decide to do that or not. But maybe you might want to hold off on making a major decision until Mars leaves Pisces, or until, Mercury retrograde ends, and that's probably going to be right at the end of April. Or, an alternative might be that you may end up having to make a decision, and that may happen because we have like 2 eclipses that will be happening around this time, which I'll explain in a bit. And so if you really do have to make a decision, in March or April, it might be that it's the best decision you can make at this point in time, but that decision may end up changing down the road. So it's a very interesting time that we're entering in with March and April 2024. Then a few days later, on March 25th, we have the lunar eclipse in Libra. This will be in 5 degrees Libra. So if you, know how to look at your natal chart, look to see what house or slice of the pie, as I like to call it, this eclipse will fall in, because that will be representing the area of life that will probably be impacted. Or if you need more guidance on that, feel free to reach out to an astrologer like myself or Stella. So, you're already in this funk of like, you want to get things started, but this Mars and Pisces energy is giving you some uncertainty or maybe holding you back. And then all of a sudden you have this eclipse that's happening. And this eclipse may propel you forward, as eclipses do. With a lunar eclipse, it could be that an ending or some kind of culmination may propel you forward into doing something or making a certain decision. So this lunar eclipse in particular has, in my opinion, 2 notable aspects. So it will be in good aspect with Pluto, which is the planet of transformation, and it will be in challenging aspect, in this case, opposing Neptune, which is a planet that represents creativity. It also represents illusion, idealism. So during this time, there might be that, kind of tug and pull continuing of, you're ready to transform. This, whatever's happening is kind of, pushing you to transform. But at the same time, you're balancing what's real, what's not real. Do you go for, doing what you want to do, or do you stay practical? Those are some thoughts that might be coming up for you at this time as we reach the ending of March. And then at the very last day of March, not a major movement, but I'll note it. Vesta, the asteroid of focus, enters Cancer, which is a sign that's about emotions. It's about home, family, and Vesta will be in Cancer until June 19th. So it will be in this sign for pretty much most, if not all, of the spring. It leaves probably like a day or 2 before spring ends. And so this could be a time where maybe you start putting a little more focus on what you're really feeling. You might decide to kind of focus more on home and family, maybe helping out your family, or maybe just staying close to home. Maybe it's a time where you realize, okay, I don't want to take any trips just yet. Let me just stay close to home. And so March itself, it really kickstarts the spring, but in my opinion, I think it's going to be a tug and pull energy, as I mentioned before, wanting to move forward, but you're trying to figure out all the pieces of the puzzle. You're wondering, is this the best time to make a decision or move forward? But you're feeling like it's on the horizon. And if you feel that way, that's to be expected at this point in the year. Then we get into April. And so April, I think it's going to be, in my opinion, a month to take a step back. As I mentioned, Mercury retrograde will be happening for the majority of April. So right on April 1st, we have Mercury retrograde. It will be retrograding in the sign of Aries. And that's interesting because Aries, like Mars, has this energy of going forward, almost being impulsive, just doing what you want to do, moving forward, taking action. And so it's interesting that Mercury, the planet of communication, the planet of thought, is moving backwards in this very action-oriented sign. And it's happening on April 1st, which for a lot of us out there, that's April Fool's Day. So, this Mercury retrograde might feel like a little bit of an April Fool's, like maybe towards the end of March, you thought, okay, I'm going to do this. And then all of a sudden, things kind of unravel or things slow down in April and you're thinking, okay, is this some kind of a joke? Like what happened? And, that's just the nature of this particular Mercury retrograde. So, beware with travel plans. If you do have to travel in April, just make sure you're really going over the details twice so that you don't run into anything unexpected or any plot twists. With Mercury in retrograde in Aries, you might have to be careful about what you say. This might be a time where maybe the things you say might be misconstrued and might be seen as more harsh than you really intended them to be. So just be careful with how blunt you are. Be mindful of your words if possible. And Mercury will be in retrograde until April 25th. So pretty much for the majority of the month, we are going to be in this Mercury retrograde. And a lot of astrologers would advise to avoid, signing any major contracts, making any major decisions. However, you're going to be hit with another eclipse in April. So again, you're going to have this tug and pull of, I want to move forward, but I can't. What do I do? And then, as an added note, on April 5th, we have Venus entering Aries. So for anybody here that's wondering about how love or your finances might be affected in the spring, Venus entering Aries will have some influence. Venus will be in Aries for pretty much all of April. So it will be there from April 5th to April 29th. If you're thinking about relationships, it might be a time where if you're in a relationship, you might be focusing more on what are your needs? How can you get your needs met in a relationship? If you're single, it might be a time where maybe you make a connection, but it might end as quickly as it starts, potentially. So just, if you're making any new connections, any new love connections during this time, just, kind of take it slow, even though you may not want to, or maybe take it quickly and just go with the flow and see what happens. In regards to finances, it could be a time where you get or you may want to take some steps or do some new things, take some new action when it comes to your finances, but just be careful to not make any decisions that are impulsive that you could regret later. Then a few days later, we've got our next and second eclipse of the spring, and this one is a solar eclipse in Aries, and this will be taking place in 19-degree Aries. With solar eclipses, it has a slightly different energy than lunar eclipses. Solar eclipses are about something new starting, like maybe a new realization or something new happening that propels you forward or gets you to change your mind or bring some new energy in your life. I noted 3 aspects that might influence what happens to you during this eclipse. So this solar eclipse will be right next to Chiron, which is the asteroid representing our inner wounds. It will also be conjunct or next to Mercury, the planet of communication, the planet of thought. The interesting thing here is, as this eclipse is happening, Mercury is retrograde. So Mercury is not at its full capacity. It's a little confused. It's going backwards. So, normally, having a moon, in this case, solar eclipse being a new moon next to Mercury might be good because maybe it encourages you to speak up about something, or you're finally able to communicate some sort of message, but Mercury is going to be going backwards. So just be careful as to how you do that if you are compelled to do that at this time around April 8th. A lot of astrologers out there have been saying that this is like a major eclipse. I don't know. I mean, it really depends. It might affect, Aries, Libras a little bit more. I don't think there's that many aspects happening with this eclipse that makes it seem like it's a big deal. Maybe Stella would have a different opinion if she was here today. I always love that debate. But for me, it could be a major one, but I've seen more impactful eclipses. And you'll see later on in this episode how some of the full moons and new moons happening, I think, are even a bigger deal than this eclipse. But eclipses are still something notable to keep in mind. They really do some oftentimes speed up something that was meant to happen in your life. Like maybe you think, oh, okay, I see myself having a new job in 2 years. But then all of a sudden this eclipse happens and this new job happens like way sooner than you expected. Or you think, oh, you know, I see myself moving from the city I'm living, you know, maybe in 6 months from now, but then it happens now. So those are the types of things that eclipses do. They kind of speed up your destiny a bit. So yeah, this solar eclipse / new moon will be happening next to Chiron, which is all about our inner wounds. It'll be happening next to a retrograding Mercury. So just be careful with yourself at this time. Really take that extra care that you need. You know, you might be feeling a little more antsy, a little more pent up, you know, your wounds might be rising to the surface, and that could be a good thing. Maybe you're, with it being in Aries, you know, you're able to finally release some pent up tension that you've been having, but also, you know, be mindful. You don't want to get yourself in a sticky situation. The one challenging aspect for this solar eclipse that I noted is that it will be in square with Ceres, and Ceres is the asteroid that represents how one wants to be nurtured, how one nurtures. So, you know, if you're a parent, you know, this eclipse might affect you a great deal in that area of your life, or maybe you end up having some sort of challenge with somebody that you have seen as a caregiver, or that you provide caregiving to. So yeah, I feel like even though this eclipse is happening in Aries, which tends to not be the most emotional sign, it might be a very emotional time in your life, unexpectedly so. Then on April 19th, Taurus season begins. So, you know, happy birthday to all the Tauruses out there during this time. So this might be a time where you try to be a little more grounded. You know, Taurus is a sign that's known to be grounded, known to be practical, also known to be a bit stubborn. So this might be a time where you're like really stubborn about your views or really stubborn about what you want to do. But again, you're in this Mercury retrograde month where it might be hard to move things forward, or it may not be the best time to do so. Then the next day, April 20th, Jupiter is conjunct Uranus. And it's an exact conjunct, so they're going to be like right next to each other. And so Jupiter is the planet of luck. It's the planet of expansion, the planet of opportunity. And then Uranus is the planet of the unconventional and oftentimes represents something unexpected happening. So during this time, you may have something unexpected, a new opportunity that comes about surprisingly. And you may have to think about, okay, do I take this opportunity? Again, you're in a Mercury retrograde month. So be careful about whether this is the best decision for you. If it's something that maybe was an option in the past and has now come about, maybe it could be a good decision because technically it's something you were already thinking about. It was something that was already presented to you, but now it's coming to fruition. So in that case, it might be a good option. But maybe it's an opportunity that seems too good to be true and might be just that. So, you know, be careful with any opportunities that might come your way. In my opinion, it may not be as much of a slam dunk of like, this is a great, you know, opportunity. Or it could be that during this time around April 20th, you have a change in mindset that's unexpected. And in that case, you know, that could happen, you know, with Mercury, the planet of thought, going backwards. Maybe you're reflecting on something in the past and you're realizing that maybe that was a better option, or you realize the path that you're on may not be the best path and you might have to change it up. And, you know, that could be okay too. I think April, there's going to be a lot of energy coming your way, but I do think it can be a month of reflection and really taking a step back before you get into the nitty gritty and the more impactful parts of the spring or of 2024. Then on April 23rd, we've got a full moon in Scorpio. So that's going to be happening in 4 degrees Scorpio. And full moons usually bring some sort of an ending, some sort of culmination, maybe some sort of realization. The one notable aspect I realized with this full moon is that it is in square or in challenging aspect with Pluto. So I found that pretty interesting. Pluto is the ruling planet of Scorpio. So that might, that aspect itself might add a lot of scorpionic energy to this full moon. And I didn't really notice any notable positive aspects. Like there aren't really any notable positive aspects with other planets. So this full moon might be pretty tough. And again, it's happening while we're still technically in this Mercury retrograde. So, maybe all this reflection that you're having or all these possibilities that are coming your way bring about a certain ending or a certain realization of an ending that might seem kind of sad, but maybe for the best. And, maybe how you're transforming and how you're evolving is getting in conflict with, something that's going on in your life, and you have to make some sort of realization, decision, or just reach some sort of ending to get past it. Scorpio is also a very investigative sign. It's a psychological sign, in my opinion, kind of a sign that represents psychic ability as well. So maybe something rises to the surface and that you have to deal with, and it brings some sort of change. Then finally on April 25th, Mercury starts going direct. And so at this point, you might start feeling like it's okay to move forward, or you're starting to feel that weird tug and pull energy, perhaps going away bit by bit. So I think a lot of people will feel some sort of relief as April starts to end. Then on April 29th, we've got Venus entering Taurus, and it'll be in Taurus until May 23rd, which is interesting because I'll get into why May 23rd is going to be like the biggest day of the spring, I think, in my opinion. So, we're getting from this Venus in Aries energy to Venus and Taurus energy. So like I mentioned before, Aries can be this very action-oriented, impulsive type of sign. So maybe, in the prior month or so, you might have been feeling very like impulsive, like having a new love connection, and it just felt right and you went for it, or making some really impulsive or very quick money moves. And as Venus enters Taurus, you might start to think about, okay, which are these decisions going to work out in the long run? Or if they are working, how to really ground them and stabilize them. So that might be the energy that you're feeling. Also, for those living in the Northern Hemisphere, by April 29th, the weather might be getting even better. So you might feel like connecting with nature a little bit more. And that might be a good thing to do as this part of the spring begins. And then on April 30th, we've got Mars entering Aries. So Mars at this point will be leaving the Pisces nebulous kind of energy and going into its home sign, or one of its home signs. So Mars is going to feel comfortable yet again, and it's going to be in Aries for quite a while. So it will be in Aries from April 30th until June 9th. So for a good part of the spring. So this is going to feel like a time where you want to finally take action. You might be feeling more clarity at this time, or starting to feel more clarity. And this will be happening as Mercury retrograde has ended. So you're not going to have this weird Mercury retrograde energy happening as you're wanting to take action. It's really going to feel like you can move forward. And that energy will be very helpful for you to have as we enter May. And May is going to have a lot going on. It's the last full month of the spring. And so let's get into it, because I think May is going to be a big month. It's almost like March and April will be preparing you for whatever is going to happen in May. Okay, so in May, right on May 2nd, we have what I consider to be another chapter of this impending Pluto in Aquarius time period. So on January 20th, Pluto once again entered Aquarius, and we go over this in more detail in our Energy of the Winter 2023-2024 episode. So if you want to learn more about what Pluto and Aquarius could mean, and how the January 20th, date and chapter of this Pluto and Aquarius era could affect your life, feel free to listen to that episode. But Pluto will be going retrograde on May 2nd, and it'll be there, it'll be retrograde until October 11th. And so I feel like this is just like another chapter, another installment of this Pluto and Aquarius era. It's going to be a time where maybe, we look at our inner selves a little bit more. Pluto is the planet of transformation. And also, associated with Scorpio, associated with the 8th house. So, and all those astrological components, could have a lot to do with our psychological states, anything that's like in ourselves. So this might be a time where you really do continue to reflect a bit more, maybe where you face not only your good sides, but your dark sides. So for those that choose to go on that journey, May 2nd could really get you started on that. Then on May 7th, we have a new moon in Taurus. And so I feel like there's more aspects happening in this new moon than there were in the eclipses, or more notable aspects, in my opinion. So new moons can bring about new intentions, new beginnings. So, with this action-oriented energy that, really kind of kick-started at the end of April and is continuing on to May 7th, or to May in general, you might be feeling like it's time to set a new intention. It's time to really move forward. This new moon has, for the most part, good aspects. I think this new moon will be really positive. It's happening in 18-degree Taurus. So if you're knowledgeable on looking at your chart, look to see what house or area of your life will be affected in this new moon. This new moon will be right next to Venus, the planet of love and finances. It'll be right next to Jupiter, the planet of luck and opportunity and expansion. It'll be next to Uranus, the planet of the unconventional, the unexpected. And it'll be in good aspect with Saturn, which is a planet that can be a tough teacher, but also a planet that sets up structure and that works hard. So this could be a time where you really feel like you can move forward, and that you'll be able to figure out the steps on how to do that, but also you will feel supported by the things that maybe you felt like you couldn't control. So maybe during this time, not only will you feel like you could put in the hard work to get something accomplished, but you'll have like other people or maybe outside forces helping you as well. Perhaps an unexpected new opportunity really can come to fruition during this time. So as I mentioned before, April 20th, so towards the end of April, Jupiter went conjunct Uranus, and we might still be feeling that energy, maybe not as strong, but we might still be feeling that energy by the time May starts. And so maybe by the time it's May, you'll feel like this unexpected opportunity that you got can actually get started. Maybe you get a job offer towards the end of April, but you're not really able to make a decision on it or really start with it until, almost 2 to 3 weeks after, which would be when May 7th happens. So I think there's a lot of positive energy with this new moon in Taurus. And then on May 15th, we have Mercury entering Taurus. So, we're getting more into that Taurus energy as May goes along. Not only, before Venus entered Taurus, so maybe you were feeling like when it comes to love or finances, you could get grounded, but now your thoughts and your communications will follow suit. Maybe you realize that there's certain things you need to stand for and be stubborn in, and you'll get more of that energy as May goes on. But then, a few days later on May 20th, Gemini season starts. So we're getting grounded, but then we're also entering this Gemini season, which Gemini is a sign that's about gathering new information, keeping options open. So you might hit some plot twists where you felt like, okay, this is it, or I'm going to do this, or this is the person I'm going to date, or or I'm going to do this with my money, but then new information comes in. That doesn't necessarily mean it's a deal breaker, but there's new things that you'd have to consider and integrate with the things that you're standing for. Then we have May 23rd, in my opinion, the biggest day of spring. There are no eclipses happening on this day, but there are three different things happening. We've got the full moon in Sagittarius, full moon spring endings, culminations. Then Venus is entering Gemini, so we're getting a bit more of that Gemini, keeping options open, gathering new information type of energy. And then Jupiter, the planet of luck and expansion, is going to be in sextile or in good aspect with Neptune, the planet of illusion, the planet of creativity, the planet of also, you know, being idealistic. And with Jupiter supporting that planet, maybe you can actually make your dreams come true on this day. So it's really the only day that I saw in the spring where there's multiple impactful things happening. And by the time May 23rd comes around, you've had, you know, the kickstart to spring that March will bring. You've had the reflective tug and pull time of April. You've been experiencing most of May and feeling that ability to move forward. So by the time we reach like the latter part of May, which is May 23rd, you might really be feeling like, okay, this is it. Things are moving forward. And so the thing is, though, with this full moon in Sagittarius, I think this is the most activity filled and the most impactful moon placement that's happening in this whole season. It has more, probably the most notable aspects that I've seen from any of the eclipses, full moons, or new moons that are happening in the spring. And possibly, unfortunately, with this full moon, there's quite a bit of challenging aspects, which doesn't have to scare you or anything like that, but there might be a lot that you'll have to consider during this time. So this full moon in Sagittarius will be opposing Venus. It will be opposing Jupiter. It will be opposing Uranus. The interesting thing is earlier in the month on May 7th, we had this new moon in Taurus. And remember, this new moon was right next to Venus, right next to Jupiter, right next to Uranus. So, and which in aspect language would be conjunct or conjunction. So conjuncts can be, you know, very good. Like Venus and Jupiter are very benefic planets, they're lucky planets. And so having anything next to that is a good thing. So the new moon in Taurus on May 7th could have brought a lot of positive energy, a lot of new opportunity, new things to consider that you are looking forward to considering. But then all of a sudden later on in the month, on May 23rd, Venus, Jupiter, and Uranus are all opposing this full moon. So maybe it's something where, you know, these new opportunities have come about, or you make this new decision, and then all of a sudden later on in the month, you're coming to terms with, okay, what do I, like, how do I balance this? What do I have to give up? Or not give up, but like, what do I have to change about myself to make this work? It's a lot of like coming to terms with the decision, the aftermath of the decision, the aftermath of what you're considering. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a bad thing. I mean, it's encouraging that the challenging aspects that are happening are oppositions as opposed to squares. Squares are a little more challenging than oppositions. So, you know, you might have what feels like maybe a change of heart or some kind of realization, you know, something that felt like a great idea at the beginning of May, all of a sudden you're considering other things. But with this full moon in Sagittarius, there are two positive aspects that can help you out. So this full moon will be trine Neptune. It'll be sextile Pluto. So I think you're going to be feeling a lot of like opposing forces on May 23rd, but it could end up being a positive time. You can make it work. It may be you have this new thing that's happening and you're wondering, how is it going to fit with your finances? How is it going to fit with your relationship, your opportunities? You know, maybe something unexpected happens that you have to consider. But ultimately, if you lean into your hopes and dreams, if you lean into your creativity, if you lean into what is meant for your greater transformation, then I think you can win out during this time on May 23rd. Then also on this day, we have Venus entering Gemini. Venus will be in Gemini until June 17th. And this could be a time where you get different opinions, maybe where you keep options open. So maybe another way to get through this time is getting different insight. If you feel like something can't be done or you can't balance these opposing things in your life, get a second opinion. You know, there's sometimes us thinking that we know it all, or thinking that we know what's best, or that all there is to know is what we know. Sometimes those inner beliefs can hold us back. So don't be afraid to get out of your comfort zone with the resources out there and the information out there that's useful, that could be useful for you to know. And then Jupiter will be sextile Neptune, as I mentioned before. And so during this time, you could be really drawn to, using your intuition. You could be drawn to the mystical if you're into that sort of thing. And you might even be drawn to stepping into the unknown. So May 23rd is really going to be an impactful time, and it'll be interesting to see for yourself how this ends up panning out for you. Then 2 days later, we start a new Jupiter era. So every year or so, Jupiter will change signs. So we have been in the Jupiter and Taurus era for about a year. And then on May 25th, Jupiter will be entering Gemini. And this will be interesting. So if you want to, I think Stella and I talk about this a bit in the modern dating episode, and how this could affect dating, how the outer planets entering Gemini could affect dating. So definitely listen to that if you're interested in learning more about how this era could affect the dating world. But in general, Jupiter will be in Gemini until June 9th of 2025. So for a little over a year. This could be a time where maybe you become more open-minded, you expand your mind in some sort of way, you gather new information. Maybe, Gemini could represent siblings or your local neighborhood. So maybe you get more in tune with those things, or those areas of your life bring you good fortune. Maybe, it could bring you more openness in relationships. I think a lot of people during this year are going to really explore more of kind of the openness that's happening in relationships, whether it's polyamory, throuples, whatever the case may be, or just finding your own idea of what more openness in a relationship is. So definitely look to see where, which house or which slice of the pie of your natal chart this Jupiter in Gemini will land. Look to see what area of your chart has the sign of Gemini, and that area of your life would probably be what's impacted during this time, and what may get a boost of good fortune. And so that's May. So like I said, there's a lot happening in May. And then we enter June, which is the last month of spring. And notable things that are happening there is that on June 2nd, Jupiter will be trine Pluto. So it's, as you might have noticed, there's a lot of activity with Jupiter this season. In May, Jupiter being sextile Neptune. And then Jupiter being conjunct or next to Uranus in April. So Jupiter, this planet of expansion, is really making some major connections or aspects with these other outer planets. So this spring in particular, spring 2024, really should be a season for you to pay attention to. This could be a time where you could really make the things that you want happen, or get some good energy that you might have been lacking for a while. So on June 2nd, you've got Jupiter trine Pluto. This could be adding to possibilities opening up, whether it's your mind opening up to new possibilities or physical possibilities in the physical world showing up. Then on June 3rd, the next day, we're getting more into that Gemini energy. Mercury will be entering Gemini, and Mercury will be in Gemini until June 17th. And this is really a good time to communicate. If you were feeling held back from really doing some important communications in April, like if you weren't having that conversation you really needed to have. If you do some sort of like actual writing communication, like you're a writer or something like that, or do content online, maybe you were feeling held back a bit. Perhaps things will move forward and you'll be feeling more of that confidence as June begins. But with Mercury entering Gemini, things can get really scattered. Mercury is really comfortable in Gemini. Mercury is the ruling planet of that sign. So that could bring a lot of good thoughts, a lot of, being able to get a lot of different things done, but don't take it too far where you're spreading yourself too thin. Then adding to the Gemini energy, we have on June 6th, the new moon in Gemini. So I think overall, this would be a positive new moon. It's going to be right next to Venus. It's going to be right next to Mercury. It's going to be sextile the North Node and sextile Chiron. So I think, this could be a time that could positively affect your relationships, your finances, how you think, the things you want to say. It could really push you, it could be another step that pushes you and keeps you on that road of you feeding your soul and you fulfilling your soul purpose. And it could be a time of healing as well, with it being in positive aspect to Chiron. And that kind of brings me back all the way to towards the start of the spring, where we had that solar eclipse in Aries, which also impacted Chiron. So maybe any sort of healing that you did during that time, maybe just continues on as June begins. The one challenging aspect is this new moon being square Saturn. So this might be a time where maybe, you want to move forward with things, maybe a new opportunity comes up, a new realization pops up, but you're not feeling like as motivated to move forward with it or to get it done. Or maybe, you're realizing something, but you're not quite so sure about how to get around it, how to set up the structures or steps that you need in place to get it done. And so, that might be the one challenging thing, but overall, it's going to be a positive new moon. Then on June 9th, Mars enters Taurus and will be there until July 20th. So we'll be there into the summer. And so we're getting out of that Mars in energy, Mars in Aries energy, which is very like forward moving, action oriented. And all of a sudden you're entering this Mars and Taurus energy. And Taurus is a sign that's all about, it's a little bit slower. It's still a get it done sign. It's a very grounded sign, a very responsible type of sign, but it's not going to be as like impulsive and like full of energy as Aries. So, which is fine. Maybe after having a really intense and impactful May, you kind of realize, okay, I'm going to get into a little bit more of a routine. I'm going to slow things down a bit. Maybe you had a lot of the steps and action that you needed to get things started in May, and now you can kind of like ease into this new step or this new reality as June starts, and that's fine. Then on June 17th, we start getting into a little bit more of the Cancer season, which usually kickstarts the summer. So on June 17th, we have Venus entering Cancer until July 11th, and then we have Mercury entering Cancer until July 2nd. So, we're going to be feeling more of that Cancer energy, perhaps reconnecting to our families, getting in tune with our emotions, maybe taking a step back and relaxing a little bit more. It could also be a time where our emotions become a little more apparent. So just take care of yourself during this time. And then on June 19th, Vesta, the asteroid of focus, enters Leo. And whenever this happens, I think this just brings positive energy. It kind of brings in more of that summer feel. Like you're going to want to start thinking more about how to have fun. You're really going to be out of like the winter slump by this time for sure, because you'll be at the tail end of spring and heading towards summer. So you might want to focus on your kids. If you have any kids, you might want to think about what fun things you could do with them this summer. Or maybe you want to feel like a child again, maybe getting into some hobbies and things that you enjoy that you used to do when you were younger, whether it's painting or hiking or playing sports. And then on June 20th, we start getting into summer, and then Cancer season starts. And I look forward to us doing the episode of what to expect in summer 2024. Will it be laid back, you know, sort of like how summers, you know, like last year or the year prior might have been, or will it be just as intense as the spring can be? I guess we'll find out when the energy of the summer 2024 episode comes out later this year. But that was it. That was everything to expect for spring. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to myself or Stella or comment here. Thank you so much for listening. And we'll see you in the next one, and have a great spring 2024. It's going to be an interesting one for sure. Could change your life.